All right, everybody. Um, I am so glad that y'all are joining us today. My name is Brooke Keto, and I am a program coordinator here at Alzheimer's Services. I'm so glad that y'all are able to join us today. This is our first ADAPT series presentation of the year, and we have two more coming up in the next couple months, one in September and one in October. So I hope y'all will join us for those. We have some good presentations coming up. I'll include the link to those to register within my follow-up email that I'll send after today's presentation. Just some housekeeping for today. This will be recorded and it's going to be posted on our YouTube channel afterwards. I'll also send a link to our YouTube channel in the follow-up email for that you can access any of our former presentations that we've done. And also, you will remain muted throughout the whole call. If you have any questions, tech questions, or just questions for Robin to talk about at the end of the presentation in the question and answer, just go ahead and type those in the chat and we'll read those out at the end. I'll be sending a follow-up email, like I've said. That's going to also include a link to an evaluation. The evaluation is what needs to be completed for you to get your CEU certificate sent to you. So just be on the lookout for that. And then another reminder to make sure that your display name keeps your first and last name in it. That just helps us know who is attending for participation. Now that we got all that out of the way, I wanted to introduce our presenter for today, who is Miss Robin Maggio. She is a graduate from Northeast Louisiana University and Louisiana State University. For over 30 years, Robin has worked as an oncology social worker at Women's Hospital and the Cancer Pavilion. She regularly presents to local businesses and agencies on topics such as grief, stress management, and the role of a social worker in the healthcare setting. So please join me in welcoming Miss Robin today as she discusses how we make mental health a priority. Thanks so much, Miss Robin.
Thanks, Brooke. Yeah, my name's Robin, and I'll be talking to you today about making your mental health a priority. So I'm going to give some information, but the whole goal of this program is to help you come up with a plan for yourself about how to make your mental health a priority. And in so doing, you can improve the quality of your life as well as the life of someone that you're caring for or those around you. So, we talk about mental health, we talk about mental illness. So first, to clarify, mental health basically refers to our emotional, psychological, social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, how we act. It helps to determine how we handle stress. So how we react to situations that we're put in. It impacts how we relate to other people and how we make choices. So looking at that, it's clear that mental health is a very important part, and it's important at all stages in our life. There's a lot in the media, particularly recently, about the mental health of adolescents, young adults. Again, at every stage of life, mental health is important. And so being aware of that right there can improve things. So mental health is the positive side of it. Mental illness, which we also talk about, is a maladaptive way. It's not the healthy way. It's maladaptive thoughts and behaviors that can impact all areas of our lives. It can be thought disorders, which means how we think, or it can be mood disorders and how we feel. There are clinical guidelines that are very established, researched, and debated that identify specific diagnoses that would need to be treated by a mental health professional. So some of the types of clinical diagnoses that you might hear are things like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, obsessive compulsive disorder. Those are all things that would fall under a mental illness. And those clinical guidelines, they are put together, and it's a book, it's a manual. I think we're on the DSM-5, maybe revised. So that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. And that's where all these clinical diagnoses are with all the criteria. They also usually have a time frame, and there might be some other qualifying things. So it's not something that we can just say, oh, I'm depressed. We might have depressive symptoms, we might feel depressed, but to actually get that diagnosis, we need to see a mental health professional. That could be a psychiatrist, it could be a social worker, it could be a psychologist, it could be a licensed professional counselor. There are different entry points into that field, but and it's also important, this is one of my pet peeves, is that we not throw around those terms like, oh, I'm so OCD. Well, someone that's truly suffering with obsessive compulsive disorder may have trouble functioning. More than likely, we all have traits of some of these things. We may be very structured, we may be pretty rigid, we might have, a routine that we do, and we don't want to vary from it. But unless it's been diagnosed by a professional, it's best to not claim those diagnoses. So, and if you think that you might have one of these diagnoses, excuse me, or if other people around you are giving you feedback, excuse me, that you might, you might be depressed, then it's best to try to get an evaluation done by a mental health professional. So, those are real things. And if someone is suffering from depression, it's hard to take care of somebody else. If you have high anxiety and your day is not in your control, that is difficult. So those are very valid things to be aware of. Also, if you're a caregiver, and maybe if you're not a caregiver to someone with a specific illness, but you're the mother of 4 children, or you have other responsibilities, all of this is relevant. And when we're dealing with life in general, we can feel stressed, and that can be every day. It can be most of a day. So that becomes chronic stress. And what that does to your body is pretty impressive, or what it can do to your body is pretty impressive, and even a little scary. And so I found this helpful. I went to a presentation a while back from a doctor who specializes in functional medicine, and she talked about all of these things, and it was pretty eye-opening. So if you are dealing with chronic stress, it can affect your brain and nervous system, which means that the fight or flight syndrome is not working properly. And so you might be overly on the fight, you might be agitated, you might be angry a lot, you might be fussing back at people, you might be nitpicking arguments, or you might have that anxiety and that fear and want to flee. And so if that's not being regulated properly, that can cause problems. It can also cause shortness of breath, and as far as the heart and blood vessels, and it can worsen already existing breathing issues with your respiratory system. It affects all parts of the body. And so if you think about something that you have a medical illness that's underlying, and then you're put in this caregiving situation, that it can exacerbate that. So it's very important that you're aware of what's going on with you physically, and maybe make some of those connections. It can also cause shallow breathing, which in turn then can impact the ability of different organs to function properly. It can release more cortisol over time, which can lead to other medical problems. We're kind of familiar with these things like muscle aches and muscle tension, headaches. It can also increase your heart rate and risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke. It can trigger digestive pain. Again, this is something that we all think about a lot, like things like IBS or just changes in your digestive tract. It can decrease libido and fertility and cause menstrual irregularities and increase the severity of PMS. So it can infiltrate every part of our body. So when we talk about making mental health a priority, what does that really mean? So the first thing is to be aware that the person that you're taking care of more than likely wants you to be the best person that you can be. And that means caring for yourself, which means your mind, your body, and your soul. So being willing to just start and make that commitment, I'm going to work on this. Once you make that commitment, it's important to know the basics, know about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your areas that you need to work on? What are your limitations? What are the skill sets that you have? What is your personal mental health history? Maybe you're a person that people have always said you're a little wound up, or maybe you get the feedback that, oh, you're always so quiet. I always worry that you're depressed. You may get that feedback from other people, or you may know that about yourself. So knowing your personal history as well as family history, because sometimes those things we pick up on those maladaptive coping strategies, and we see that, and that becomes a part of who we are. Also, to know basic resources. I talked a little bit about counseling, and there are other professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists that can prescribe medication, your primary care doctor. Those are all people that should be a part of the resources that are available to you. So one of the first things, and probably one of the most important things that I think you can do, is to start with establishing a routine. And that can be very basic. It can be waking up at the same time every day. When we have a routine, it allows our body to get into a rhythm, and it also allows for some expectations. So again, it can be very simple. Waking up at the same time each day. Maybe that's where you start. And after you do that for a week or two, then maybe you say, okay, well, I'm gonna wake up at the time, and then I'm gonna have my cup of coffee right after that. And if I can wake up at the same time and drink that cup of coffee, that starts my day off in a positive mode, and I can build on that. You probably have thought about times that things are chaotic, and you have these 30 things in your head that you need to do, but there's no plan, there's no structure, there's no schedule, and how that can cause you to feel chaotic and unfocused and not able to make decisions and go from one step to the next step. So if you can start with just one behavior each day about the same time of the day, then that can help you establish a routine. It can be at night. Maybe the mornings are too difficult, and it's better for you to have a good routine that nourishes you before you go to bed. And so maybe by doing that in the evening and getting sleep sets you up for a good day the next day. So the other thing that's important is to engage in evidence-based practices. That's more of a professional term, but what it means is that things have been researched and looked at, and there's data that shows that if you do this, then something is impacted. So now that we have social media, if you're on Facebook or any type of social media, you're going to get ads about all kinds of things. And I frequently see ads for the red light therapy, which is relatively new. And that seems weird. It seems like a fad, but there is research that shows that it can be helpful. Because it's new, there is research, but there will be more research. And so it will become more specific, and it can become, it can be effective for more specific situations as the research gets better. Another term that's come up recently that I've seen is grounding. And there's two ways to do the grounding. One way is when you go in nature and you literally connect with the earth and the ground. The theory, I believe, is that the earth has some electrical charges, and when your body makes contact with it, there's a reaction and it improves your mood. There's also a technique called grounding to help with anxiety. If someone is anxious and we are trying to keep that from getting worse, then we may talk about grounding, which is to take some deep breaths and to identify, tell me 3 things that you can see. Tell me 3 things that you can hear. Tell me 3 things that you can touch. Tell me 3 things that you can smell. Tell me 3 colors that you see. And that's a way to get you back to the present moment. And that is so important, because the way most of us lead our lives these days, again, we've got those lists going. And when we have those lists in our head, it really takes up a lot of important space. And that can keep us from being able to focus and to be able to complete tasks or activities. So being able to come back to the moment and then refocus is a pretty effective technique. It's something that doesn't cost any money. You don't need anybody to do it with you. You can do it yourself. So it's one of those self-regulating activities that can be very helpful. The other thing that's so important, and for people that know me personally know that this is one of my deals, is having boundaries. Boundaries are so important for us to have quality of life and positive mental health. When we don't have boundaries, that means anybody and everybody and anything and everything can dictate how we spend our energy, how we spend our time, what our priorities are. So setting boundaries is about knowing yourself and setting those limitations for yourself. Boundaries do not impact behavior of anybody other than yourself. You can't set a boundary for somebody else to do something or to not do something. A good example is if someone is drinking and they want to drive, you can't necessarily stop them, but you have the ability to say, I am not getting in the car with you when you're drinking. That is a limitation that you have set for yourself. So I hope that clarifies that these are changes or limitations for you, not for anybody else. Because a lot of times when I talk about this with boundaries, people say, oh, well, nobody listens. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. It has to do with you. And if you're willing to set those boundaries and not engage in certain behaviors or activities. Now, when we are new to this and start setting boundaries, it can be difficult in relationships because you're upsetting the apple cart. You are not doing just what anybody and everybody wants you to do. You're making those decisions. And whenever we change the dynamics in a relationship, it can cause trouble. So you have to be aware of that. You have to be prepared for that. And that's why when you set boundaries, it's important that you've really thought about it and that this is really important to me so that you can support it, you can defend it, you can make changes. If somebody points out something that's appropriate and it's reasonable to you, you can make changes. But these are decisions for you to make. And so I would think about them before you make any big changes. So again, without boundaries, you don't have much say in your daily schedule, your priorities, your activities. Those are things that are determined by other people. So you want to know, how do I want to spend my time? What is important to me? And that's how you set those boundaries. Another important part of establishing your mental health as a priority is to know when to seek support or help. So I'm a professional social worker, so I do believe in the value of counseling, but counseling is not needed for everybody. So it's important for you to, again, start with looking at yourself. You can get feedback from other people. Maybe you have one or two people that you know that you think are pretty good listeners and would be willing to kind of help you just by listening and maybe giving some feedback or validating some of what you're talking about. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it's helpful to link with an agency or a group or an organization that has similar thoughts and beliefs and values. For instance, like the Alzheimer's Association. You know, when you come here that people are dealing with similar situations. So there's some sense of connectedness and acceptance. It could be, I was just talking to somebody the other day who is a teacher, and she finds that the library is a comfortable place for her where she can go and there's different groups and organizations and things like that. And that gives her an outlet, and she's around other people that appreciate learning. So that's good for her. Some people find that in their church or their spiritual organization, that those are the values that are most important to them. So they want to be around other people who have similar thoughts and who can maybe support them when they're going through a difficult time. Sometimes it requires a professional intervention. And again, that you can start with your primary care doctor. Most primary care doctors have a system to be able to help you figure out where you need to go. A lot of primary care doctors are comfortable with prescribing medication. Most of them have other mental health professionals that they feel comfortable making a referral to, that you can start there. But if you are feeling like, okay, I've been trying this, I'm spinning my wheels, I really want things to be better, that might be an indication that you want to reach out for some professional help. Sometimes other people give you that feedback, like I've mentioned before. They may say, I'm worried about you. You don't seem like you're yourself. What's going on? And so if you're getting that feedback, then I would look at that and start that process. But my point in this presentation also is that you can work on a lot of these things on your own. I'm not saying everybody has to go to a counselor or a mental health professional, but if that's needed, don't avoid it. Okay. So get started. Have that conversation with yourself. Really. Make the time. Be honest with yourself. Go through the scenarios, all the things that you have to do. But heard somebody say the other day, put your big girl panties on. Let's get started. Once you agree and you're on board, you do have to acknowledge what the barriers might be. And particularly from people that are serving as a caregiver role, oftentimes it is, I don't have the time. I have to be focused on my mother, my partner, my child, whoever they're caring for. And so that is a big barrier, is time. Also, what goes along with that is energy. For some people, it's almost like living two lives. You have your own personal needs, and then you're tending to the needs of, again, your partner, your parent, your child. And so that is a real thing. And so some of the changes that you make might be minor because that is what you can do. But being aware of what those barriers are is really important, because you don't want to set yourself up for not being able to do anything. And to know what usually gets in the way of you practicing good mental health hygiene. So make small goals. Make sure that they are basically attainable. And like I said, maybe start with, you set the alarm clock. You don't just wake up when you wake up. You set the clock every day. And maybe you have your cup of coffee, and maybe you give yourself 10 or 15 minutes just to kind of breathe and just kind of be in the moment. If you can identify one small thing to do, one small thing, and do it consistently. Another thing that you can do, I mentioned the grounding, where you identify what you see, hear, smell, touch. Another thing that you can do is practice some breathing exercises. Very basic. Where you breathe in through your nose and count to 3, and then out through your mouth. And if you repeat that a few times, you will feel the physical calmness that comes with that. That is something that you can do throughout the day, multiple times, to remind you to take care of yourself. After you do something consistently, whether it's wake up every day, have your coffee, have a few minutes, do some breathing, think about how you feel. And is that helpful? Did you notice anything different? Did it change maybe physically how you're feeling? Did it change maybe your outlook? Like maybe you had a little bit more patience or compassion, or you had a little bit more energy to be able to be proactive about something. So you want to try some new behaviors, and you also want to build in some feedback so that you can make some modifications. Because not everything we try is going to work, or maybe it works, but we don't like it. So you don't want to keep doing something that you don't like or enjoy. So you may have to play with this a little bit to find the things that you like and that actually have a positive benefit. So some other things that you can try are some physical activity. A lot of times we are just scraping by. We don't feel like we can do, add anything to our day, but it does not have to be, hours at a gym. It doesn't even have to be going to a gym. It could be something that you do in your home, or that you can incorporate into your caregiving duties. Sometimes if you just put on some music and move around, You can call it dancing, you can call it moving, whatever you want to do, but just getting the blood flowing is a physical activity which we know can improve the mood. So it could be a few minutes in your garden, it could be walking the dog, again, putting on music and moving around. All of those things would count, as well as the breathing. Sleep is very, very important. We know that sleep deprivation is used as a form of torture. So we know sleep deprivation is not a good thing. Sleep deprivation can cause a manageable situation to become unmanageable. So that means that if you were getting regular sleep, you would be able to handle this situation. But because you're not sleeping, your brain is not working properly. You do not have the ability to problem solve. You do not have the ability to self-regulate. And so a situation can quickly get out of control. Now, you do not need, or I'll say most people do not need 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep every night. If you can get 4 to 6 hours of uninterrupted sleep 2 to 3 nights in a row, that is enough. So don't have the expectation, I'm going to sleep 10 hours and I'm going to sleep like a baby. That may not happen, but to get 4 to 6 uninterrupted. So that means not having the TV on, not scrolling on the phone. It means making sure that, hopefully if you can, not have to get up to go to the restroom, that sort of thing. When we talk about the importance of sleep, particularly with new moms, I will make the suggestion that if she has somebody that can come over, 1 night a week, 2 nights a week, and take those night shifts so that she can get those few hours of uninterrupted sleep, that can change everything. And so in this situation, if you have someone else that can come and take the night shift so that you can get good sleep, then that may be helpful. So improved nutrition. We all hear that all the time. It's important to eat, and when you're trying to live your life and take care of somebody else and then maybe work, it's hard to think about nutritious meals. And so that is a hard thing to do. What I encourage you to do is to take it small. If you can, when you go to the grocery store, pick up some things that are easy. A thing of grapes, some bananas, things that you don't have to spend a lot of time in the kitchen prepping and cooking and that sort of thing, but things that are healthy, that are easy to access. A handful of nuts, piece of fruit, that sort of thing. And to make those small changes, also drinking your water is very, very important. Dehydration can cause a multitude of physical problems. Can't tell you the number of times that we've had people admitted to the hospital. Family members think that they're having an episode of some type of psychosis, or they're dying. And as soon as we start the fluid, all those things kind of change. So making sure that you're getting adequate hydration is very, very important. And if that's hard for you to do, again, get a jug that how much is in it, and you work on drinking that all day. If you go somewhere to eat, instead of getting the fried stuff, try to get the grilled stuff and maybe have 2 or 3 extra bites of a veggie. Little steps. Try to have a little bit less sugar. Again, little steps. So disconnect. What does that mean? Well, some people need to make very specific efforts to connect with other people. I'm not saying connect on social media unless that is your only way to connect with people. Sometimes our lives are such that we really cannot get to a meeting or a function or see someone in person. And if you can connect electronically, then that's better than nothing. Most of us could benefit from disconnecting from social media for a little while and focusing more on what's in front of us. Focus on yourself, your thought process, your mood, your quality of life. Focus on those family and friends, coworkers, church members, neighbors that you have a bond with. So to see maybe where you fit in, whether you need to disconnect or connect. And I would also encourage you to set aside a few minutes. Maybe it's while you're in the car, maybe it's while you're showering or bathing, that you just are not thinking. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And again, setting boundaries. It's one of the most important aspects of good mental health. Being able to say no, being clear what is healthy for you, and putting energy into yourself. So, so important. So, mindfulness is what I was talking about earlier. Mindfulness is the strategy of basically emptying your mind of thoughts. And when we live a busy life, again, taking care of somebody, we're trying to live two lives, there's always something that we're thinking about what we need to do next, what we should have done, but we didn't get to, what's coming up next week, all of the things. And to give yourself the gift of emptying your mind, even if it's for 10 minutes, you'd be amazed at how beneficial that is. There's lots of ways to do that. There's lots of things out there that can guide you in that. Mental health professionals can help with that also. Personally, I use it at night. If I wake up and my brain's going, I use some techniques to help empty my brain and get back to sleep. And then I'm able to clear my mind and get my adequate sleep as well. So, and then decluttering is kind of similar to that, in that declutter is really referring to your environment, whether that's your office, your bedroom, your kitchen, your living area, your garage, your shed, whatever it is. When our environment is so full of stuff that we can't see what we have, we can't use what we have, we can't benefit from what we have, it muddies up everything. And oftentimes what happens is, because you can't see what you have, you go and purchase more. And so then you've put yourself in a financial situation where you don't have to. But it's more about when things are seen around you, you can see everything you have, you can be more efficient, you can be more effective. And if you think about when you walk into a nice hotel or a spa and everybody says, oh, it feels like a spa in here. Most times it feels like that, and it elicits such a positive response because it's calm. The environment is not chaotic. There's not things piled on top of each other. It's the basics and it's calm. And so if you think about that, and it does get overwhelming if you have a lot of stuff around you to start to declutter. Once you start, usually you're at a hot pace because it does feel good. It is hard to start. And so there are people that are out there that help with organization, they help with removal of things. And so to consider that also as a part of good mental health, to have a clean environment. Also, again, asking for help, speaking up and saying, hey, look, I'm working on this stuff, but I need some help. And you might get information that's new to you. You might get information that you kind of know, but you needed to hear it again. But sometimes you get new information, and sometimes it can be a little surprising, but it's good to kind of raise that red flag and say, hey, look, or the white flag and say, hey, look, I need some help over here. So, you may get information that's hard to hear. And so it may be like, oh, no. I don't want that. I don't want that. Okay, well, that's good information. You know that you're starting the process, but you're not quite ready. So that's good information. Sit where you are for a little while, and then you try it again. So don't be afraid to let people know that you're working on things, because we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes we don't know where our best support is going to come from. We may not know that our neighbor is dealing with the same thing. And once we speak up, then we make that connection, and maybe we can help each other. So you have to implement your plan. We can think about it, we can make the plans, but we have to start it. So one thing that I think, I like this word, intentional. To me, what that means is I have thought about this behavior, and this behavior is in line with my beliefs and my values and my priorities, and it matches up with how I want to spend my time. And so I am going to set these intentions. I am going to be intentional about this behavior. And in the bigger picture, it's like doing 2 or 3 things at once. And so it's pretty good bang for your buck. It's really hard to identify something, the doctor said I need to do this. Well, if that goes against your values, it's going to be really hard to do that and to get anything positive out of it. So being intentional and making sure that the actions that you choose line up with your values, that saves you a whole lot of time down the road. Also, being able to engage in assertive communication is so helpful. So assertive communication basically means that you're speaking about yourself. I want, I need, I don't like, I wish, I want, I can, I cannot. You are only speaking about yourself. There's no accusations. You always do this. You always say that. You never do this. That is aggressive communication. Assertive communication means, like the boundaries, you're focusing on yourself, and you are communicating things from yourself. You can be angry and assertive at the same time. It doesn't mean that you let people walk over you, but what it means is that you don't engage in aggressive communication styles. You're not combative, but you are clearly stating what your needs and wants are. And when you start doing that, people start looking at you like you have 2 heads, but then they get it. And it improves the quality of that specific relationship very quickly. The other part of communication is that you have to be willing to listen. Again, people may give you feedback that's hard to hear at first. If you change behaviors, if you set boundaries, that has the potential to change how they do things, how they manage things. And so they may not be so happy at first, but you have to listen, and not listen to respond, but listen to hear, because you may get some good information about yourself, about the situation, about the other person, about new ways to do something. And so listening to those around you. Because communication is giving and receiving. It's not just talking, it's listening and getting that feedback and having that back and forth. So in conclusion, consider making a commitment to yourself. I hope that I've given some information that makes putting your mental health a priority as something that seems like it would be a good, positive thing to do in your life. So I really encourage you to think about making that commitment to yourself. Remember, you do have to set up a plan. You have to look at what your limitations are, what the realistic expectations are. Start small, and also making sure that your plan is able to align your behaviors and your values. That's really important. And then don't forget to breathe. Again, in through your nose and out through your mouth. And repeat that. One more time. Okay, any questions or comments? I really appreciate your time today and listening, and I hope this puts you on the path to making your mental health a priority.
Yes, thank you so much, Robin. Yep, the chat is open if anybody wants to go ahead and put some questions in there. I'll think of some questions before then for you, Robin, until some folks start contributing. But for local resources, so let's say that someone, you know, they hear this presentation and they think, yes, I need to go ahead and get going with this. What are some local organizations or groups, meeting spots that you think people should know about?
Um, One thing that I have recently discovered is our library system. They have literally, I think they have 1,000 different activities every month.
Mhm.
And those aren't necessarily mental health resources, but they are connection resources. They have presentations on different topics. They have groups that meet. And so I would encourage you to go to the library's website and just look to see what's available there. Um, I think for me, it ignited new interest and said, oh, yeah, I've been wanting to find a group of people that do this. They actually do things like to have a seed swap where you can bring seeds that you don't need and you can get seeds and plant new things if you like to garden. So they just do many, many things.
Mhm.
There is also a, just lost my train of thought. There's a Mental Health Association of Louisiana, Baton Rouge, I believe, also, that may have some resources. Um, you can also check with your PCP about counselors. I think also sometimes we don't connect our spiritual life with our mental health, and we don't always think of going to the church for coping strategies. There are many churches that have groups, like a grief group or a widows group or something specific. So I would check churches, and I think the United Way has a lot of good organizations that you could check their website as well.
Yeah, Great ideas. We also, especially for folks who are care partners, or if you are looking for something that is connected with dementia in some way, we have a ton of groups here. Um, and then for something, more general, not dementia connected, but the Breck Park system
Oh,
for,
yeah.
local, they also have a really robust calendar of adult leisure activities, is what they call it, adult leisure. They have also a really great group of activities there.
Oh, and you say that, that reminds me of Council on Aging. I know some people that are
Mhm.
very active in their local Council on Aging. They do all kinds of stuff, sewing classes, dancing, all kinds of things.
Yes, 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 yes. All right, some really great ideas, or people saying that they got some really great ideas and valuable information from this.
Yeah,
Miss Robin, one person's asking if we could share the copy of the PowerPoint slides. Would that be okay?
sure.
Okay, I already have a copy of them, so I can attach them in our follow-up email. I
Great.
have another question from someone is asking if you could do an example of a grounding exercise. I know you kind of did the one that you kind of counted down, or you can count what's around you and with your
Hmm.
senses, but either can you give us an example of what a grounding exercise is, or if we could even do one together quickly?
It's really the one that I use the most is that where you can put your feet flat on the ground and put your hands on your legs, and that way your feet are touching the ground. And so if you think about this, grounding is getting centered and being in the moment. So put your feet flat on the ground, put your hands on your legs. You can open your eyes to do the C, or you can keep your eyes closed and say, what do I hear? Three things. What do I smell? And with your eyes open, what what three colors do I see? What three objects are in front of me? Is the temperature warm, cold? So, and you can elaborate on that, but that's the one that's the easiest and the quickest to
Mhm.
kind of do. If you like to be outside, the recommendation is that you're actually making contact with the earth for 10 minutes. And that can mean taking off your shoes when you go walk outside, making sure that it's safe to do that. It can be, excuse me, if you go to the park, just sitting on the ground instead of sitting on a chair. Um, I just take off my shoes and walk in my backyard and make sure that my feet are hitting the grass and the dirt. And so they're very
Mhm.
simple things to do.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. You hear that sometimes when people think that they're, being, out of touch. They say, "Oh, I need to go touch some grass."
Yes,
It's kind
yes.
of
Or I need
like,
to get my hands in the dirt.
yeah,
That is a
yeah,
way to make that connection.
yeah. Thank you for explaining that again. Just more of like a practical, things that you don't need anything fancy to do. You could quite literally
Correct.
do that experience anywhere. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Um, Another question is about sound therapy. You hear about, sometimes people talk about sound baths, or, bells, chimes. I think there's even a different type of therapy that goes along with tones to help relax your mind. Can you talk about that? What is that? If we need to be aware of that.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with it, except that, when you think about an individual, we have those senses. And so the sound being one of our senses, and I think it's not just the sound of it, but it's the whole setup where you are in a calm environment. It is quiet. You're able to focus on your breathing. You're able to focus on what's going on in your body, relaxing your muscles. And then the sound, which I've seen it with you know, light music, harp type music, or um, not drums necessarily, even though some people do drums, but more the, what do you call it? Not a bell, but like a metal sound, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, like a
Um,
vibration type of sound.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that can be calming to a lot of people. But again, it has to do with what works for you. There's
Mm.
some people that, for whatever reason, whether it's something that happened in their past that is not helpful for them, it causes more anxiety or stress. So I think it's great to try all the things and find the ones that actually, um, bring you relaxation and clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that I think is interesting to point out, through your presentation, you were talking about a lot of different things that are active, setting boundaries, decluttering, being social, all very active things. But also, a part of establishing mental health could be being inactive, just being
Correct.
still and, having a balance probably also of both of those things to.
Hmm. Yes. Balance is a big deal. We can get very focused in one area, whether it could be we're focused on what's going on in the whole world versus we're so narrow in our vision that we can only see, what's right around us. But you want to have that balance. You want to be paying attention to the details, and you want to look at the big picture. And how do you balance that? It can
Mhm.
be a balance of time, it can be a balance of activities. Um, but we balance is a big part of being healthy.
Absolutely.
I mean, also
Absolutely.
nutrition wise too. Yes, you want to eat healthy, but you can have that little treat too. It's the balance.
Yeah. That's a great thought to take from today. Okay, one last question before we close it out. And this is a question that I like to ask a lot of our professionals that do presentations is, what do you wish that you could tell any dementia care partner, dementia healthcare professional, if you could impart, one piece of knowledge or that you wish everybody knew this one thing? Does anything come to mind whenever I ask that?
I would say that the benefit that you would get from making sure that you're nourishing yourself is going to tenfold show up in taking care of your partner.
Mm.
It is that valuable that you will see it in that relationship tenfold.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We
You're
have just
welcome.
a couple of minutes more, so if anybody else had any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We definitely have a lot of positive comments, a lot of folks. Oh, someone's clapping for you in the
Yay, thank
reflections.
you.
But I did just again want to note that I will be sending a follow-up email to everyone. We'll include the PowerPoint in that email. I can also, Miss Robin, would you like me to include your email in there?
Sure.
Okay, cool. And I also will include a link to our next Adapt series presentation. We have still so much coming throughout the year at Alzheimer's Services, including, of course, our Adapt series presentations, one more Lunch and Learn for the year. We have another TLC coming up, Arts and Alzheimer's. And then, of course, we have our full month of November, which November is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And so we are always jam-packed that year, or that month of the year. So if anybody ever has any questions, just reach out to us at Alzheimer's Services. We are always happy to support. however we can. But I will go ahead and close us out. Miss Robin, thank you so much for your time and sharing with us your experience and talent today. We so appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
All right, everybody. Thank y'all. See y'all next time.